This is the Embodied Performance Podcast, episode 30. I'm Nick Markey, Beach Barbell, Physical Therapy and Performance and Strength Training in Wilmington, North Carolina. We're currently building out our gym. If you're interested in joining, we're holding a launch promo and charity drive until November 1st. Check out beachbarbell.com for details. So I made it to 30. I am proud of myself because I've successfully have done a podcast Monday through Friday for the last 6 weeks, I guess. 6 times 5 equals 30. And like I've mentioned about before with discipline, trying to just hold something consistently is one of the most important things. And sometimes and often more important than making it perfect or most optimal. One of the things I've found most helpful is when I think of an idea to talk about for the podcast, I write it down as soon as I can so that inevitably when that idea fades away in my head, it's down somewhere. That way I'm not scrambling to think of an idea too late, which has happened, admittedly, but since I have written it down a few times, I've noticed been helpful. So I think with this 30 mark, what I'll do is I'll start making a theme for each day of the week. So I'll start today, and today I think Fridays will be Fun Friday because I love sci-fi and fantasy stuff. Books, movies, all that, comics, graphic novels, whatever. And so I like to think about, possibilities out there, wild ideas that maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years, out. Who knows how long I'll last or will all last, but certainly we're going to see, interesting things over these next few decades, just like, the computer coming out, personal computers, 70s and 80s, and then getting better and better every year to the point where I'm now recording my podcast in a handheld computer, called a smartphone. So today's Fun Friday topic, I'm going to talk about an idea I've been thinking about. It's pretty sci-fi, but that stands for science fiction. I think at some point it could be a potential possibility. So what I'm talking about is a device, maybe like a glove that a clinician would wear, both hands, that would be able to maybe sense the nerve or neuron signals and how strong, each neuron was firing in terms of like its threshold. So a quick recap, nerves are like a light switch. They either go on or they don't. And for them to go on, they need to reach a certain threshold. Generally what's put in like the biology textbooks is negative 70 millivolts. So if something hits it at negative 50, doesn't fire. Something hits it at negative 60, doesn't fire. Something hits it at negative 70, it fires. Hits it at negative 80, it fires. So it doesn't matter how strong it is. It only matters if it reaches that certain point. So what we come to believe with maybe things like persistent pain is that perhaps some of the nerves have become more sensitive, meaning that threshold has been lowered. So maybe instead of negative 70, it's negative 40. And so that means that signals that maybe wouldn't have gotten it to fire off before will now make it fire. We can't really read that. We have no idea. So that's the thing with, some people persistent pain, we'll get an MRI, and one can argue that, MRIs are even getting better where the point where they're seeing, more and more and more detail. So maybe at some point we'll see something with an MRI, but we're talking about neurons that are, tiny. I mean, we can see like the nerves, the bundle around it, think of like the casing on a wire. We can see that, but we don't really see the actual neurons inside it. So my sci-fi idea is, what if there was some sort of handheld thing, like a glove, where you read the neuron threshold. So, for instance, if say that somebody is sensitive, maybe you put one glove on that part and then the other glove at the brain, because the chain goes from that area up to the brain, and then you could read maybe the threshold of the chain. And there's 3 chains of neurons. I believe I talked about some of this in my past episodes about pain and chronic pain. So I'll give a recap, though, that, there's for the sensory system. So like when somebody touches your leg, or when your body's trying to, sense what's going on in the world, there's, the actual tissues, the skin, muscle, and all that. And then there's nerves that hook up to all that. So there's one chain that hooks up from the actual tissues to the spinal cord, another chain that hooks up from the spinal cord up into the middle of the brain, and then another chain that fans out from the middle of the brain out to the outside of the brain. So this device would maybe read the threshold, and perhaps it could get good enough where it could tell you which neuron has a higher threshold. So, like if the second chain in the neurons was the one that had the lower threshold, then it could pick up that, say, oh, your first chain is good. It's reading at -70. Ooh, your second chain's kind of hot. It's reading at -30. And then the third chain, oh, that looks good too. It's reading at -70. Reading it would be good, but, being able to fix it would be even better. So, maybe not the first device, but maybe later versions of it would be able to actually, alter that threshold. And you would do it in real time. So you might say that somebody has pain in their knee when they, squat down. Then you can read those thresholds and see, oh, looks like one of these is hot. Let me just drop it a little bit. And then you test it again. And then they test it again, and then, what if they either have, no pain with their squat or a little bit less, and they're kind of going, okay, let's keep it there for now. And then, maybe for a week or two, you kind of keep practicing and see what you can do in terms of working on that. Now, some issues would be if perhaps one of those sensitivities is, for a more positive reason, what if it's there because, there is some healing going on and the body is trying to kind of keep you aware of that. Now, I think if that were the case, the ongoing healing would be if necessary, it would re-trigger some more sensitivity. That's why I think you would have to probably just drop it a little bit, alter the change a little bit at first, just to kind of test it out instead of dropping it a ton and then until they feel nothing, because you still need to feel something. And then another downside, and this oftentimes happens in rehab, is where somebody will feel better for, with pain being complicated for a myriad of reasons, but say that they feel better and maybe even they don't feel any pain at all anymore with that particular issue. But then they go and because of that, go jump into a ton more activity and then just re-aggravate it. So, even without this technology, this already happens a lot, But so I think you just still would have to have that conversation. There would still be that interaction in terms of, hey, look, we're just trying to help you feel a little bit better, but you got to realize there are processes that are going on that you have to be wary of. Now, if this, thinking sci-fi, if this is like actually something that happens or is made, then perhaps there will be all sorts of other tech that would just, speed up the healing process or something. I mean, there could be all sorts of biotech, enhancements and stuff like that, people could have that perhaps that wouldn't be as big an issue anymore. But that's just one thing I'm thinking about in our current state. I think this would, have great help for people with like chronic pain, persistent pain, because then you could perhaps, help them feel better, but, without extra medications. And again, you'd probably do the same thing. You would just lower it a little bit and then let them go kind of live their life and test it out. And then as they're doing better, maybe you alter it, lower as needed. And also it could be potentially, if this were legit technology, and you could alter the threshold of the firing of the nerves, I would assume this would also coincide with maybe being able to figure out what the different links are in the brain and whatnot. So then that way you could, perhaps with things like depression, anxiety, fear, if their neurons in the brain are linked up to the other centers that are kind of causing, suffering and decreased quality of life, you could perhaps we could figure out ways with similar technology to maybe unlink those or link them up more positively. I think it would still have to be in context of some sort of therapeutic type thing, because to help the person kind of reintegrate to this new thing. I think that would be the best way to go about it, and certainly VR technology, I would guess, is going to play a huge role in that, because that's getting better and better, and certainly could have big implications in terms of rehab and recovery, and trying to kind of reestablish different ways of thinking and behavior and all that. And certainly that kind of technology would be continuing to advance, possibly to the point where you can like feel what's going on in the VR world, instead of just, seeing it and hearing it. Maybe we can get to the point where it's connected in other senses, like smell and feeling, touch and feeling and whatnot. So I think that'll end the Fun Friday segment today. Like I said, I'm going to, over this weekend, come up with some ideas on what kind of things. I mean, I know a lot of people do Motivation Monday, so I might just end up doing that, and then just do like a motivational topic. Some other people do like Technique Tuesdays, so that could be a day to talk about, different exercises or movements. And then I could just come up with different ones. Obviously they have to be matching the day of the week. So we'll have to come up with different words for that. But anyways, thanks for listening. I hope you have a great weekend. Again, I'm Nick Markey of Beach Barbell, Physical Therapy and Performance Training. New gym coming very soon. Launch promo, charity drive till November 1st. Please check out beachbarbell.com for details. Thank you. Bye.